Morning everybody, how are we all this morning? Welcome to another Technique Tuesday. It's very lovely to have you here, no matter whether you are watching live via Facebook or if you're watching on catch up, and that might be Facebook, YouTube or my website. No matter how you are watching this morning, thank you very much for taking the time to tune in, and I hope you've been enjoying this bee project. We'll talk more about that in a second. What I do always like to try and do, if you have taken the trouble to tune in live of a Tuesday morning, is to give you a bit of a shout out. And of course, every week we award a fictitious first prize to the person who comments first in the room, and that today is Patricia. Good morning, Patricia. I gather from your comment that you've had a bit of a rubbish couple of weeks, so sending you a big hug. Very glad that you're here, and I hope that in some small way I cheer you up a bit this morning. Who else have we got in the room? We have got Heather. Heather is saying, I hope you are well. I am incredibly well at the moment. Thank you very much. Anne G, good morning. The lovely, beautiful, buzzy D is in the room as well. Good morning, gorgeous. Anna, Karine, Rosie. Rosie saying it's cooler in France. It's a bit cooler in Dorset as well, has to be said. Anne B, good morning. Ali. Now, Anne B came and visited me in my studio yesterday, so it's very nice to see her. She was in the area, popped in for coffee. You're always very welcome. If I'm here, the kettle's always on. Julie is saying, good morning all. My grandsons went early, so I can join in. Bit more difficult for you to drop in, Julie, but you're very, very welcome. Maureen, Sue. Sue has put, woohoo, looking forward to seeing some colour. I am as well. Lynn, good morning you. Andrea. Oh, Andrea saying good morning, lovelies. Just my kind of language. Isn't that gorgeous? Joe, good morning. Susan. Janice. Janice is saying, thought I'd lost you, but now you're found. I was here. Joy, Lynn, Barbara, Martina, Rosemary, who's over in Denmark at the moment, saying it's raining heavily. That's rubbish. Lou Stafford, good morning. Lots of people in the room this morning. Lots of you very excited to see me adding the colour. Do pop up in the chat and say hello. My apologies if I miss your hello coming in. It's not personal. What's Anne saying? Good morning. I'm watching while excitedly packing for my daughter's wedding on Friday in Brighton. 4th lockdown date. Do you know what, Anne? I pretty much guarantee that it's going to happen because Friday the 20th of August is a good date to get married. Going to leave that out there. Kathy, good morning. Like I said, if I miss your comment or your hello, I do apologise. They come in a bit thick and fast, and sometimes I'm looking down at my painting and not necessarily paying attention to the comments. So shall we have a look at what we've been working on, and I'll catch you up on some of the things that we have been doing. Morning, Thea. Morning, Val. Morning, you. Jean. Stop and start today. Don't know if it's my Wi-Fi or yours. It's yours. I'm sorry. It is yours. I've got a really, really good signal. One of the reasons I'm so happy today because everything's really stable. Nobody shout. Sharon, lovely to see you. And Dee is asking what's happening on Friday. Can't possibly imagine what's happening on Friday. Anywho, let's take you to the overhead camera. And morning, Kat. And I will catch you up on a bit of what we did last week, a bit of what I've done in between, and we'll get going on our painting, shall we? So, Judy, good morning. So here is the line drawing that we talked about last week. You will probably know that I increased it in size a little bit before I transferred it onto my surface, and I've changed it a little bit as well, but we'll talk that through. You can see I couldn't quite fit it on one piece of A4 paper. So I had to put it on 2 pieces of A4 paper and then stick them together. But that's fine. That's fine. It's not a problem. It's not a problem at all. Is this cheating? Tracing? What do I say? No, not at all. So that was my line drawing. Stick that over to one side. Good morning, Teresa. Good morning, Linda. And here is the little colour chart that we did a couple of weeks ago now. And I've got it next to me because I just wanted to remind myself of some of the decisions that I made. Another really good reason for doing it. You would think that I remembered what it was that we talked about and the decisions that we made. But when I came to prep this last night and this morning, some of this I couldn't even remember talking about. So this is why it's really useful to have a colour chart like this, particularly where I had made some decisions. And actually, I've made a few changes since this, but it will all become clear. So I'm going to prop that up over to one side so that I have it to see. Now, bee drawing might look a little bit different. One of the reasons being that it's Trisha, good morning. Anne is saying, great to see it on my laptop rather than on my phone. Looks fab. Oh, thank you. One of the reasons it looks a bit peculiar is because I have this covering it over the top. This is a piece of glassine paper, just in case you've not come across glassine before. This is something, morning Jan, that pastel painters use all the time. Good morning, Andrew. Lovely to have you here. This is something that pastel painters use to protect their very delicate surface on their pastel drawings, but it's really useful to have because if you've got something very special and you're worried about smudging it or you're worried about making it dirty or any of those kind of things, a piece of glassine paper over the top can sometimes be really useful so that you can work on it and then you can pop this down and then it can go in your folder or however it is that you keep your artwork, and then you don't have to worry so much about damaging it. Obviously, because this is, what's this, week 6 now of this project, isn't it? That it goes to one side and then it comes back in again, and I don't want it to get grubby, particularly as we're now onto the good stuff. So I've put this piece of glassine over the top. You can get this in pastel pads if you've particularly pastel matte paper. Morning Sandy, morning Wendy. It tends to be interleaved, or you can buy it individually. It's made by Clairefontaine. You can buy it in big sheets and chop it up. This was actually a rather ratty old piece that I hadn't used in a pastel pad, so I saved it and just made sure that I kind of kept it to one side ready for the next project. So I'm going to roll that up and lay it over the top. And here is that finished bee drawing. Now you might notice a few changes. The eagle-eyed amongst you might be thinking, hang on a minute, Ali. There's a lot more honeycomb in there than you had on your original drawing, and you'd be absolutely correct. And you know when I put that honeycomb in this morning? I put that honeycomb in this morning about 10 minutes before I went live talking to you, because I was sitting here staring at it like you do, thinking about the composition, thinking about how I'd never particularly liked the regularity. I know honeycomb is a regular shape. I get that it is a repetitive shape, but that is where I'm an artist and I can do what I want with it rather than necessarily absolutely replicating nature. So I was okay about where I'd placed this honeycomb, but I wasn't thrilled about it. So I set to it with my stencil, which you've seen me use on previous weeks, and actually I realised that the thing that I didn't like about it was that I'd used only 2 sizes from the stencil, and actually what I needed to do was to mix it up a bit so that I've got some really tiny hexagon shapes and I've got some much larger ones too. So I'm much happier with it, and I'm much happier with the composition of it, particularly because this little hexagon down here drops below our bee's bottom, which I know is a daft thing to worry about, but it's something that I went, well, I don't like the fact that this almost lines up, so I'm going to drop it down a bit further. And equally, I didn't particularly like the fact that these hexagons that I had put in originally were below the antenna line, and I wanted them to kind of disappear up away from the antenna and above it too. So you've got a bit of a diagonal composition. So we've got some symmetrical qualities, we've got some asymmetry going on, we're playing about with diagonals, all of that kind of stuff. All of that is, as Lynn quite rightly points out in the comments, artistic license. And what's not to like about artistic license? Morning, Heather. Oh, Heather, is it drizzling in West Wales? I do hope it gets better for you. So what we're going to do today, we're going to start to put some colour on this, and I'm going to make an attempt to at least start 3 elements of this. I want to start the backdrop. I'm not going to call it the background because it's not the background, okay? It's a backdrop for this. Morning, Fran. It's a nothing. Yeah, it's just a little bit of colour behind our bee to stop it looking so white and to provide a few layers before we get to the main event. That's what we're after. So I need to drop a colour in kind of around this. Then what I want to do is morning Sandra, want to put some texture in, which I think I'm going to do with Brusho. Haven't quite decided yet. It is over here lurking in the top right hand corner, but I haven't quite decided yet. So, let's see how that goes. Then if I do decide to do Brusho, then I might decide to do some Milton, which I will talk about, and then I'll start the Honeycomb. So strap in, everybody, because there's quite a lot to talk about this morning. Now, there's a lot of comments that have just come in as I've been talking about that. Denise, good morning. Rose Henry is saying, good day from Western Australia. Good morning, Rose. It's very lovely to have you here. Thank you for taking the time to tune in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pop some colour into the background. I'm kind of going to try and hit it all in one go. It's going to be a bit of a challenge, but never mind. I'm going to do that in watercolour, and I'm going to do it in cerulean. Why am I going to do it in cerulean? Because cerulean is a lovely cool colour. It gives the illusion of air. It gives the illusion of kind of sky. If we want to place our bee in a situation that we think is relatively naturalistic, then cerulean is going to be my weapon of choice today. This is watercolour. This is squeezed out from a tube into an empty pan. I have spritzed it with a little bit of water before we went live, just so that for me it is the perfect consistency, because I was Goldilocks in a previous life. I don't like my cerulean too wet and sticky straight out of the tube, and I don't like it too hard in a pan. I like it just right. So that is the perfect consistency for me. I've got a pot of water over here to the right. I've got my little bit of traditional kitchen roll, which I'm just going to lay back down temporarily. And I need to select some brushes. Now, this is not me showing off. I mean, it is me showing off, but it's not intentionally showing off. This is my brush roll that my very clever mum made for me. A lot of you have chatted to my mum in the past because you probably know that she's a very, very talented seamstress. So this is the brush roll that she made for me. I would love to be able to tell you these are all the brushes that I use on a regular basis. I can actually tell you that probably those brushes are the brushes that I use on a regular basis. I'm a bit of a creature of habit. I like brushes that I can predict. I like to understand my brushes. These here are all the SAA's imitation sable brushes. We'll have a discussion about those on another day because I want to get cracking. Now, what do I want? What size do I want? Do I want a 10 or do I want a 12? No, do you know what? The 10 is always my workhorse. So I'm going to stick with that size 10 for the time being. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful fabric? I mean, I'd love to be able to say that I painted that, but I'd be lying. So let's stick that to one side. You notice that I put my bit of kitchen roll down so that I didn't put my slightly grubby brush roll all over the top of my beautifully pristine painting. Now, ordinarily, if I wanted a fuzzy background, I would go around with my spray bottle and I would spritz it all the way around so that when I got to the water and I was starting to fill in my colour, it would kind of fuzz out. It would do the thing that watercolour does best, and I'd be very, very happy with it. However, I don't want it to run. I don't want it to be doing a kind of painterly type of thing. I want it to be impressionistic and ethereal, I think, but I'm going to do it section by section. So I'm going to work quite quickly with a blending out technique. How am I going to do that? I'm going to stick my brush in the water. I'm going to load it up with cerulean. I'm going to make sure that my brush is relatively even so that I haven't got great big blobs. This is another reason why I squeeze my colour out, because what I hate is lifting my brush away from my colour and having like a big blob of liquid colour on there. It takes too long. So I'm going to start, where am I going to start? Let's start in here. And I'm not going to worry too much about my negative painting. I'm not going to kind of overthink it. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not going to try to be too prissy about the placement of it, because that way madness lies. Morning, Mariam. What I'm going to do is make sure that I have the strength of colour where I want it placed. Now, this is the Two Rivers watercolour paper, don't forget. So this is quite heavily sized, and what that means is that I can float my colour for a little bit longer on the surface before the core of the paper catches hold of it, and then I can't do anything with it. So I can lift it out if I want to. I can move it around if I want to. I can fuzz it out if I want to. Obviously, that's the technical term for it. One of the reasons I chose the Two Rivers paper was because I knew that I would have longer to play about with it. So let's get that blue sort of disappearing off. And then because I've done it section by section, I can take a little bit of my kitchen roll. I can lift out any areas that I'm not particularly happy with or that I want to put a texture in. And then I've got that kind of nice, soft, nothing background. I'm really pleased with that. So let's crack on with the rest of it. I'll try and get this done nice and quickly for you so that we move on to the Brusho and some of the other considerations today. This is a perfect time, if you have any questions, and you're watching live, obviously, to get them in the chat, because I've got to make my way around this bee, and I can watch the comments and the questions come in at the same time. Now, I think probably ordinarily I would turn my piece of paper upside down when I got to doing the left-hand side of it, but it's Technique Tuesday. Let's just crack on with it, shall we? And I'm taking my colour right up to the edge of the Two Rivers paper, because we said, didn't we, we wanted to make a feature of that decal edge. Now, who else have we got popping up? Carolyn, good morning. Let's just take those little dots out. Lots of people talking about Western Australia, which is very cool. Heather has asked a question, is that wet on dry? Yes, it is. My paper is dry. I have not wet it at all. I'm loading it up with colour, and then I'm using a blending out technique. Some artists call it softening, some artists call it smudging. All I'm doing is adding some colour to the paper so that it takes away the majority of the white and gives our bee an extra little dimension of depth. Dimension of depth? That's terrible grammar, Ali. Your mother would be horrified. I don't think she's in the room today, so she'll get away with it. Maybe I need this to be a little bit stronger. I've just lifted that out. Typical of me. I think I need it to be a bit stronger. And I definitely don't want those blobs there. That's better. Okay. So we've got a sort of wispy nothingness. Rosie is asking, do the paints dry up in the pans? Yes, they do. And depending on the quality of paints you have chosen will depend on whether they crack or not. So if you haven't been able to afford slightly better quality paints, you may find they crack a little bit. If you've got artist quality paints, you will tend to find, in my experience, that because they have glycerin or honey in them as a binder, then they never really dry out completely. They have a kind of a sort of glossy quality to them, which you can reconstitute with water actually really quite easily indeed. Right, is that blue in there, I wonder? This is going to be a challenge, isn't it, to work out which bits in the middle are blue. Let's just crack on with it, shall we? Doobie. No, Rose, please don't apologise for chatting about where you are. That's it's lovely to make friends across the world, isn't it? That's kind of part of what Technique Tuesday is all about. It's about meeting up in a room. One of the things lockdown has made us realise, I think, that while social media gets an awful lot of stick about it being terrible and horrible and the place where horrible people lurk, generally speaking, I think it's the same as if you were meeting somebody on the street, is that 99% of people are absolutely lovely. And now, because we have technology, we can make friends across the world. And I think that's an awesome thing to be doing. So carrying on that blue down here. And Arlene is saying, morning. She said, oh, this is lovely, Ali. Thank you very much, Arlene. I'll have to go back and watch the previous sessions. What's the Milton you mentioned? I'm going to roll the Milton out in just a second, Arlene. I'm going to be using it for potentially lifting off some of the Brusho if I get it in the wrong place. I might not use it. I might get my Brusho absolutely on target. But just in case I don't, I'm going to use, it's a sterilizing fluid, and you can use it to lift off Brusho if it goes a little bit astray. We were doing another bee project in one of my all aboard sessions this week, and we were using Milton in that too. Anita's in the room. Anita's in the room. Good morning. The very talented Anita Pounder is in the room. If you haven't ever seen Anita demonstrate, then you must go and watch her straight away, because she's a very inventive painter. Does some rather beautiful demonstrations for the SAAs. Lovely to have you here, Anita. Thank you very much for taking the time to tune in. And who is saying that B is starting to stand out? Anne is saying that the B is starting to stand out already. Thank you, lovely. So yeah, we're just kind of, you can see now why I wanted to get that blue in, because I didn't want it to be just white paper. Like Rosie says, wanted a kind of sort of fluffy nothingness. Is that a thing? Can you have a fluffy nothingness? Who knows? I've got one now. Right, let's use a little bit of that kitchen roll to take the edge off some of the colour, lifting it out. I'm not too worried about the fact that the colour has kind of gone over some of the honeycomb. It just is what it is at the moment. Let's make sure that we've got no real puddles of colour. And then you're going to have to talk amongst yourselves for a couple of moments, because I need to dry this. Now, I do have my heat gun as opposed to my hairdryer, which means that you might be able to hear me over the top of it anyway. But let's give it a blast and see what we've got when it's dry. So Lynn is saying that she's made such lovely friends. Not possible without Technique Tuesday, as she lives in the States. Oh, so very grateful for all of the British lovelies in my life. Oh, you are a sweetheart, Lynn. It's lovely to have everybody here. And I'm always very grateful that you all take the time to tune in. Now, why am I moving this heat gun so quickly? I'm moving it because this is actually quite a hot heat gun. And I really don't, at this stage, want to burn a hole in my paper. But I might just whack it up a couple of notches to see if I can get through it faster. Bear with me. And I want to dry it on the back as well. This is really heavy paper, so it is going to take a little bit more drying than normal. Now, I need to see if that's going to be dry enough. I need to give it a bit of a waggle as well, which isn't easy with the glassine on it. I need to give it a bit of a waggle because it's pure cotton. And I need to sort of, you know, on jumpers and things, expensive jumpers that you buy, it says reshape while damp. And that's what you've got to do with a bit of cotton paper in exactly the same way. Is it still a little bit damp on the edges? So we'll give it another, it's still damp down here, you see. I thought I'd dried it and I really hadn't. Okay. It's starting to smell slightly burning. So shall we stop? Let's pretend that that's as dry as I would like it to be. For the purposes of what it is that I'm about to do, that's fine. That's fine. So can you see now why I wanted to get that blue in? Now, some of you will know from Technique Tuesdays of old that I used to have something called close-up cam. Well, close-up cam is back. So let's get close-up cam involved, because what I want you to see are just some of the textures that are coming through. So I've got my line drawing. Don't forget I did this in that waterproof grey pen. And so it's staying put. I haven't got to worry about it. And yes, my cerulean has gone over the line in places. Am I worried about it? Of course I'm not worried about it. I would much rather have the colour creeping in to my subject matter than have a sort of halo around it. This I can go over. This I can cover up. This I can put, because I'm a mixed media painter, I can put back in gouache or something else. But what I can't do very easily is fill in any gap between the background and my subject matter. Let's show you another little bit of it over here, because we've got the same thing going on. So we've got a little bit of blue that's crept into that honeycomb. We've got this nice granulation. Two Rivers paper kind of brings out really irregular granulation in your paints. So I've got that going on. So you can see that in nice close-up. You can also see some of the slight mistakes I made with the pen. You see that? Yes, look at that. I held my pen way too long on the surface. But that's okay. That's okay, it doesn't matter. We won't get our thingies in a twist about that. We will just cover over it when we get to do it. So let's go back to overhead. And next thing we're going to do is we are going to sprinkle some Brusho on. Now I know there's going to be some of you out there that go, Ali, are you crackers? Why would you want to be sprinkling that powder that isn't predictable and you don't know what's going to happen with it and it goes everywhere? Why would you want to be doing that on something that's taken you 6 weeks to get to this stage? And the answer is the same as the question. I want to sprinkle some Brusho on it because I don't want it all becoming fantastically formal. I want there to be an element of my personality in it, a little bit of chaos in amongst the order. That's what I want. I want it to have the sense of movement. I don't want it to look stuffed, even though it's kind of turning into an illustration as opposed to a naturalistic painting. I want a bit of something in my background. So I am going to use a little bit of Brusho. Now I have changed my mind about the colour of the Brusho since we spoke last. I use, hello Ali, I hope you're feeling better. I have used gouache, what am I talking about? Lost my mind. I used gamboge, that's the word I'm talking about, in the experiments. But I'm going to use lemon in the actual picture. Why am I doing that? Because when I had a look at this, I felt that that was a bit too orange myself. Not a massive fan of orange. I'm not a massive fan of yellow, actually. But that was a bit on the orange side for me. So I'm going to be using lemon today. Now I have grey over here as well, but I don't think I'm going to be using that. What I am going to do, and you're going to have to just bear with me because it's going to look a little bit out of sync, is I'm going to drop my board down flat, because I don't want this to run. I don't want to start sprinkling Brusho up here and it end up down here. I want my board nice and flat. Here's my pot of lemon, and I've got a good old-fashioned, if you've ever seen me demonstrate Brusho before, you will know that my weapon of choice is a coffee stirrer, and you'll see me use this in just a second. Good morning, Val. So I'm going to take my pot of lemon away from my bee. I'm going to shake it and stir it, and then I'm going to come back with a coffee stirrer loaded up with lemon Brusho, and we'll do some sprinkling. So excuse me while I do it away from my bee. I'm sure you can all absolutely understand why I'm doing it away from my painting. And just over to one side, you can just see my hand in shot. I'm taking the lid off it, and a really good job that I did as well, because the Brusho has just exploded on my drawing board. So I'm very pleased about that. Well, I'm not pleased that it exploded. I'm pleased that I didn't do it over here. So let's just do it just in shot on the right hand side. I hope you can. Do you know what? It'd be just easier if I moved the bee over, wouldn't it? There we go. That's more sensible, isn't it, Ali? I'm going to take my coffee stirrer, and even though I've shaken it, I'm going to put the coffee stirrer into the powder and give it a really good stir. Good morning, Angie. So I'm going to give that a stir around, and then when I bring the coffee stirrer out, you will notice that I've got a little bit of powder on the end. That's because the irregular surface of my coffee stirrer picks up the little particles of colour. So I'm going to take it over to vaguely where I think I want it, and very lightly with my index finger, I'm going to tap around. I mean, I can't even begin to describe how little pressure I am putting onto this coffee stirrer. I'm certainly not pinging it. I'm certainly not smacking it with my finger. I am lightly tapping away. So just the odd granule here and there. I'm also trying not to breathe out too heavily. I'll show you in close-up camera what it is that I'm doing in just a second. So I need a little bit of it down there. Let's have some down here too. The odd granule. Treat this like chili powder, yeah? I mean, admittedly, if you like your chilies hot, then that's not really the best piece of advice, is it? But if you don't like hot food, but you think it needs a bit of chili powder, treat your Brusho in the same way. So let's, where have we got it? We've got it going on up there. We've got it disappearing down here. We do need there to be a tiny little bit in here. Not much. Just a tiny amount. Right, let's move that. I can't put the lid on it yet because I might need some more, but I need to get close-up camera in just so that you can see how little is actually on the page. So if we get zoomed in here, excuse the shadow, can you see just a few granules? Yeah. There is some over on the bee where I want it. Now what you could do is take a dry brush and flick those away. But because I want to show you how to use Milton, I'm going to leave those where they are. So yeah, I've got a few granules up here. What else have I got going on down here? Yeah, just the odd granule, okay? So let us activate that Brusho with our spray bottle. You want the spray bottle to be fine because you want the water to rain down onto those granules, yeah? And you don't want to be holding your spray bottle really close to the surface. You want to be holding it, what's that, a good 12 inches away from the surface so that the spray comes out and just falls onto what it is that you're doing. So let's get that in. Oh, this is exciting. And let's get that Brusho activated. Now it is going a little bit green in the background. That's just because the lemon is sitting over the top of the cerulean, but that's okay. It's all right. It's not a problem. I like where it's a sort of a paler colour, and I like that it's giving that movement that I wanted. Now what I can do, you're never going to lift all of the Brusho off if you take a piece of kitchen roll to it, okay? You do have to be careful about moving your kitchen roll when you blot at it because you're picking up Brusho. And you don't really want to be putting it somewhere where you don't want it to be. Now, Janice has just kind of said the same thing. She said, will it not turn green when it's over the blue? Yes, it will, but I'm good with that. I don't have a problem with that. It's going to make a combination, a naturalistic combination in the background. In actual fact, it looks greener in the camera than it does in real life. So what I'm doing, look at the state of that now. Look how much Brusho actually was down. Lots of people going over my sprinkling of Brusho. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. Right, what other comments are going? No, Rosie, you're right. The the yellows don't split into the same number of colours just because yellow is a primary colour and therefore it doesn't require other colours to make it up. So in terms of if you buy grey Brusho or black Brusho or brown Brusho, you've got other pigment particles in there. Of course, you can't, because because yellow is a primary colour, you haven't got other pigments in there to make it up. You've just got the yellow. And that's actually one of the reasons that I've been using it, because if you think about it logically, whilst I do want there to be a little bit of movement going on in the background, I certainly don't want it to take your eye away from the busyness of what's going on here. So I hope that makes sense. Anne is saying, normally I think I haven't got enough and then go OTT and then I spray from too close and it goes everywhere. Yes, that is one of the things. Right, let's give this a bit of a dry, bear with me. So I'm just putting the heat down to low because Karine has just asked a really lovely question. Does Brusho come in metallic colours? So Karine, the company that make Brusho do a product called Sprinkle It, which is a metallic. You can get it in various metallic colours and some iridescent ones too. It's not the product for me, it has to be said, just because it's not as metallic as I would like it to be. I actually prefer two other metallic products. I use Pearlex, which is a powder that you might have seen me use in previous demonstrations, or the Schminker Aqua Bronze. That is another powdered colour, metallic colour that I use, and I may well use this on my bee. I haven't quite decided yet. So I'm drying that off, just need to give it a dry on the back. Just in case you're wondering why I dry it on the back, I do it so that the heat permeates through the paper on both sides. Whew, it's getting warm in here now. All these lights that I sit under, now I've just added a heat gun into the mix as well. Right, that's better. Give it a trapped me bit of nonsense. Oh, I've got myself into a right odd state here. There we go. Goodness me. I got my bit of glassine trapped under my drawing board then. There's a sentence I didn't think I would say at the beginning of the day. Let's stick this back down again. There we go. That's better. Oh, get yourself organised, Ali. Oh, Lord, got myself into a right old state here. Right, come on, regroup, Ali. Get this stuck right there. There we go. Oh, dear, right, so it's dry now. Sandy is asking, is that a non-slip mat under the paper? Yes, so I have this lovely Artco drawing board, which I use a lot for demonstrating because it's a nice shallow angle and the camera can see it really quite clearly. But I have got a non-slip mat underneath it because it's at an angle and I can do without it sliding down the surface. Why don't I stick my watercolour paper down and then it wouldn't slide? I don't stick it down because I have so many different things to show you. I have colour charts and, you know, all sorts of stuff that I need to get into shot. So this way I use a non-slip mat and then hopefully it doesn't go anywhere. Right, Milton. So, where's my palette gone? Oh, there it is. Milton. What is Milton? This is Milton. I believe you can get it pretty much everywhere, and I know that there are alternatives to this. In the workshop that we did recently, we chatted for a long time about the variations in sterilizing fluid, but it is a sterilizing fluid as opposed to a bleach. Now you can use bleach to lift Milton off of a surface, but in my experience it's a little bit too harsh. There's two kinds of household bleach, aren't there? There's the thin stuff, which actually probably isn't much use in household environment, and the sort of thick gloopy stuff that you chuck down your toilet, which is, in my experience on a painting, useless, and it's lemon scented and all of the stuff that you don't need it to do. Yes, Linda, the drawing board is an SAA product. But Sterilizing Fluid for me does a much better job of lifting Brusho from the surface. It's kinder if you get it on your hands. You don't have the fumes that are involved with bleach. You can use it in a much safer environment, although you still probably do want to use it in a ventilated area. You can buy it in liquid format, which is what this one is, or you can buy it in tablet format where you make it up with liquid. And I gather that all things work. This is the one that I go for no other reason than I go for this one because it's the one I've used and it's the one that works for me. I'm only going to tip out about a teaspoon of it onto my palette. One of those big bottles will last you a long time if all you use it for is painting. And what am I going to use it for? I'm sort of, if it was me painting on my own, I doubt very much whether I would bother with this next process, but I would be a rubbish demonstrator if I didn't take you through one of the ways that you can lift Brusho from a surface. So let's just get close-up camera in so you can see what I am talking about. Up here on my B, let's just lift it off ever so slightly so we get less of a shadow. There we go. Can you see that my Brusho has gone onto my B? Now, like I said, if it was me just working here on my own, I wouldn't bother with lifting it out because I'd just be throwing colour back over the top of it and I would be fine and dandy. But I thought it would be useful to pause for a moment and talk about it because it might be useful to you and it might stop you fearing Brusho a little bit more. Now I have got my SAA Imitation Sable size 4 brush here. It's very safe to use Milton on Imitation Sable brushes as long as you make sure that you wash them out straight away afterwards. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to arm myself with a bit of kitchen roll. I'm going to load up my brush with the Milton and I'm going to dab it across the top of that Brusho. I'm going to let it sink in a little bit and then I'm going to use my kitchen roll to just lift it off. And what it does is lessen the strength of that Brusho. It will continue to work on it. You can water it down if you want a lesser effect. There's what it is also doing is slightly bleaching out my pen, which is interesting and not something I had come across before. There you go, you see, every day's a school day. You can layer it up in terms of if it hasn't quite come out on the first pass, you can add it and add it and add it. And a slight word of warning that it is harder to lift Brusho from a very heavy cotton-rich paper like this one than it is, say, something like Bockingford, Cotman or the like. But you can see that it's starting to pull that colour away. And then if I was really worried or I'd really made a boo-boo somewhere, I could very easily pull the colour away and I wouldn't have to worry about it so much. So that is hopefully a way that you can get control of your Brusho a little bit more if you feel that it just goes far too crackers and you don't like the fact that you can't alter it. Now there's good news and bad news as far as the Milton is concerned. And Julie has just asked the pertinent question, will it affect the paint you put on the flower later on? What it won't do is affect watercolour. You cannot bleach out watercolour paint with Milton because watercolour paint is based on a pigment and not on a dye. It's an actual physical little particle that's on the surface, whereas Brusho is based much more on a dye, and so you'll be able to lift it out. Sue is asking, would a magic eraser do the same thing? It lifts it out a little bit, Sue, but my issue with magic erasers is that they can scuff the surface if you're heavy-handed with them. So whilst I do use them every now and again for stencil work and all sorts of things, it's not something I've chosen to do today. But do your own experiments, share them in the group. I'm sure that people would love to know how you've got on with them. And Anne is saying that someone's beaten her to the question. So there you have it. If you have got your Brusho down in a place where you don't want it, and let's face it, it happens to the best of us, then you could lift it out. I'm not going to do much to mine because I'm fine and dandy with it. I'm good with it. What I am going to start to do, oh, do you know what? I need to dry that. Just be careful as well, me with my health and safety hat on, be careful when you heat Milton, yeah? Just because the chances are there's a few fumes going to be kicking around. So maybe don't hover above it as you're heating it. But I'm just going to make sure all of that is dry. And then we're going to start work on the honeycomb. I'm not going to do all of it today. I'm just going to show you my first thoughts with that honeycomb. And then I will probably finish the honeycomb off for you next week. So this is the bit I want to work on. Let's bring it down ever so slightly. So I'm going to work on this honeycomb now. So we've got the nice blue in the background. We've got a bit of yellow Brusho. Yes, it will, Lynn. Milton will work on other dye-based mediums. I'm just going to, we've got the blue, sorry, in the background. We've got our yellow Brusho going on. We've given our bee a bit of a backdrop, and it's got that illusion of hovering. I mean, I've kind of put that on it. I don't think it probably has the illusion of hovering, but it certainly doesn't look like it's flat, stuffed, or whatever else. Now for this, back to the watercolour. When we were testing our colours, we decided, and I used the royal we decided that Moonglow would be a good place to start, wouldn't it? I mean, it's not a colour I use very often, she lied. It is certainly, because this project is a sort of a project for me, then I wanted to be using products and colours and combinations of things that I enjoy using. So Moonglow had to feature somewhere, didn't it? So what I'm going to do is I'm sticking with my size 4 brush. I'm going to load the bristles up with some of that Goldilocks consistency of watercolour paint. I know it looks black in the camera, but I promise you it is Moonglow. If you don't like working with colour in this way, there's absolutely no reason at all why you can't just transfer it into a palette and make it thinner or thicker or however you prefer to work. Now, okay, Arlene, yes, absolutely, you can catch up later. Now, in terms of this honeycomb, I want it to look a little bit three-dimensional, but of course I don't want it to start interfering with the bee that is over the top of it. I don't want it to be prominent, so I need to use a blending out technique, all right? And what I'm going to do, the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to lay some of that Moonglow down on a couple of sides of one of the honeycomb areas. Then I'm going to put my brush into the water and I'm going to smudge that colour into the centre. So you've got a little hint of colour going on, but it's not overpowering it. Now I need to let that one dry. I was a little bit pale with that. Oh, I know why it was, because of course I brought my brush over here to show that you could mix it in a palette. And that's way too pale, isn't it? I need to darken that up. That's all right. Let's do this one. That's better. Don't know what came over me. Moonglow in a pale form. That's not me at all, is it? So I'm using the tip of my brush. I'll do one in close-up camera in just a second for you so that you can see it in detail. And then back into the water, controlling the amount of water on my brush and using the water to smudge it into the centre and out to other areas. Now I know this bee's leg that I'm coming into contact with right now is going to be quite dark. So I want a relatively pale tone around it so that I don't have a problem with my tonal values. Now look at me faffing away there. Look at it. Yes, I can hear you all screaming from your various parts of the world. Stop poking it around, Ali. But you know what? My bee, my rules. Let's get that smudged into the centre. Now, just because that one has turned out much better than this one doesn't mean that this one is beyond hope. I just need to put a second layer on that when that's dry. What I do want to do is get close-up camera so that I can show you that again. Yes, Julie, smudge and budge. You're absolutely right. Good old phrase that the lovely Sharon comes out with regularly. So let's get it so that it's a bit more upright. Let's do this one. this one down here. Now, I reckon, I haven't decided what I'm doing with this wing yet. These are daisies, aren't they? And these are white. So perhaps I need this edge to be dark. So let's, let's get the bit of glassine underneath it. And then let's move it around so that I'm working in favour of my right hand, so that I can work on the left hand side of something. So here we go, in glorious close-up. Get it into the light so that you can see it. So there's my brush loaded up with colour, and then putting that colour down on this side. Could do with being a little bit wetter than that. Really good way of practicing your paint control, brush control, water control, all of those types of things. So let's get that colour in, washed out with some water, and then introducing that water back into the centre and smudging that colour around. So it's a little bit greasy, this colour. I wonder if something's fallen into my pan. I do tend to do a rather terrible thing of leaving my pans out on the sides of my studio, and then they get dog hair and all sorts of things floating in them. I think that's just a bit of nonsense from the top of my pan of colour. That's the disadvantage of this system, incidentally, is that if you own dogs, then the chances are that you're going to get dog hair or chicken feathers even, into the majority of it. So that was it in close up. And then if I bring it back into shot for you, you're getting a more three-dimensional look to that honeycomb. I certainly didn't want to paint it in very flat. I can lift it out with a bit of kitchen roll if I so choose. That's interesting. I don't know, I've kind of missed the boat with that one. But there you can see. So now already you have got 3 layers, and that's just the background. Well, actually, do you know what? It's 4 layers, isn't it? Because we've got the colour of the paper, we've got our cerulean, we've got our Brusho, and now we've got our honeycomb colour too. Now, I have a feeling that I am not just going to use Moonglow for all of the honeycomb. And I had that thought, I had that epiphany in the middle of the night last night, because I was thinking, right, well, obviously I'll do all the honeycomb and it'll all be Moonglow. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, but if I do it all Moonglow, then I'm not really going to have much of a relationship between the bee and the honeycomb. So I think some of them need to be yellow, and I think some of them also might need to have a bit of pink in, because we're fairly sure that this flower here is going to have a kind of pink quality to it. I haven't really decided yet. This one might be yellow and this one might be pink. Haven't got there yet. But this is why it's really important to do a project of this kind of size and scale incrementally. You can't just go at it, you know, blindly without testing some things out first. But that's the beginnings of it. I'm really pleased. I'm certainly pleased with how the bee is starting to stand out. I'm pleased with the fact that I decided to add that Brusho. I think there would have been too big a jump between the background and the honeycomb if I hadn't incorporated that Brusho in between. So all of these things go into the decision-making process as far as a project of this size. And I don't mean that in physical terms, I mean in the amount of time you are investing in it as far as those things are concerned. So, how was that? It's so lovely to get colour onto that project finally, and to really start, it's kind of gathering a pace now, isn't it? And rocketing its way forward. Still a long way to go, still some huge decisions to be made. But I know this is going to be, I don't know, maybe 10 parts to this project. We'll kind of see how it travels along. So whilst it is a long project that you guys have invested as much time in as I have, really, I hope that you're enjoying me breaking it down right into its elemental parts so that you can understand why I'm making the decisions that I'm making, that you get to see the products along the way, that you can make choices for your own paintings, because as you know, my whole reasoning for doing Technique Tuesday like this is to help you to be more self-sufficient painters. That's kind of the plan, isn't it? Now, I'm just going to read a few of the live comments that have been coming in through Facebook before we disappear. Don't go anywhere. I've still got news for you. Don't disappear. Don't put the kettle on yet. It's not quite 11 o'clock yet. I mean, obviously, if you're watching in Western Australia, then it's obviously not 11 o'clock. Lots of people helping each other out, which is very cool, about mixes to do with moon glow, all of those kind of things. Patricia is saying, Patricia is our first commenter of the day today. She's put, thank you for this, Ali. It's really done the trick and brightened up my day. Can't wait for next week's demo now. You're very kind, Patricia. I hope your week continues to improve. Lots of people liking. Oh, Val is saying she could listen to me all day. Bless you. I'd have a word with my husband about that. I think he might disagree with that. So Kat is saying, would you consider some ground on the flowers of the bee? I think possibly you mean Brusho. I might do, Kat. Might do. Lots of people saying that they're learning lots. Love it, love it, love it. That's very kind. Can't wait to see it finished, but I guess I'll have to. Yeah, I've got to work my way through it yet, Barbara. Lots of people saying very kind things indeed. Now, Angie's put a really good point. Let's finish on this one today. I get into trouble by not waiting for a mistake to dry before going over it. I am with you, Angie. If you are kind of one of life's doers, you see a mistake or something that you don't particularly like on a painting, and you think to yourself, oh, I want to fix it, I want to get it sorted, and yeah, dry it. And that, do you know what? That's why I have my heat gun. I'm pointing down here because it's on the floor. I have my heat gun so that I can get to that bit faster, because it is really frustrating if you're waiting for things to dry. Give it a bit of a blast with the heat gun, and then you'll be able to find another product or a different way of working to cover up the thing that you're not particularly thrilled with. Good morning, Ronald. Lots of people agreeing with you, Angie, that you want to fix it rather than being patient and waiting for it to dry. I do hope that you have enjoyed this part 6 of my bee project. Next week we've got part 7. That is the last time I will be live broadcasting on the Alison Seaboard Facebook page. The part 8 on the 31st of August will be when it switches over to the Learning to Paint group. So if you like to watch live, you need to request membership of that group. There's a link in this post today. And don't forget, of course, on the 29th of August, that bank holiday weekend here in the UK, I will be launching the new Learning to Paint website. I've still got a long way to go on it, but this weekend and all of next week is going to be head down and getting that website built. Here is a sneak peek of how the website is going to look. I'm really excited about all the things that I'm going to be including in it, so I do hope that you have that in your diaries. But have a great week, all of you, won't you? I'm going to dip out a little bit at the end of the week just for a couple of days off, and possibly to get head down and start building that website. So continue to take care of each other. I hope you enjoy your painting this week, and until I see you either virtually or in person very soon, hopefully, you take lots of care of yourselves, won't you? And speak soon. Bye everybody. Bye bye.